So, hello and hopefully welcome back. Hopefully I don't sound too nasally. I'm still getting over whatever this is, but I think I can probably have my voice and everything else hold out for at least a chapter. So, I think the next 4 nights we'll probably just be doing one chapter at a time, which probably will be fairly short because these aren't really super long chapters. I don't know. We'll see when I get to the end of this one how I'm feeling and if we move on. I love the chapter titles in this book. They're entire like descriptions of what's coming up, and I feel like not very many authors do that anymore. And it's almost too bad because it's kind of fun. I mean, if you're going to write a book, go crazy. Give your chapters titles. I don't like it as much when an author just does numbers. I understand why they do, but chapter titles are fun. So, with all of that, let's see if I can make it through this. Like I said in the video yesterday, I feel like I'm starting to climb out the other side of this, but man, this is whatever this is, it does not want to let go. And that's very annoying. I think I'm single handedly keeping the local expectorant and cold medication in business. If it helps, it helps, you know? Anyway, we're going to jump in and see what Mr. Jules Verne is doing in this wonderful book, Around the World in 80 Days, with Chapter 5, which is titled, In Which a New Species of Funds Unknown to the Moneyed Men Appears on Change. All right, so we're going to find out something about money. Let's just jump into it. Phileas Fogg rightly suspected that his departure from London would create a lively sensation at the West End. The news of the bet spread through the Reform Club and afforded an exciting topic of conversation to its members. From the club, it soon got into the papers throughout England. The boasted tour of the world was talked about, disputed, argued with as much warmth as if the subject were another Alabama claim. Some took sides with Phileas Fogg, but the large majority shook their heads and declared against him. It was absurd, impossible, they said, that the tour of the world could be made, except theoretically and on paper, in this minimum of time. And with the existing means of traveling, the Times, Sunday Morning Post, and Daily News, and 20 other highly respectable newspapers scouted Mr. Fogg's project as madness. The Daily Telegraph alone hesitatingly gave support. People in general thought that he was a lunatic and blamed his Reform Club friends for having accepted a wager which betrayed the mental aberration of its proposer. Articles no less passionate than logical appeared on the question, for geography is one of the pet subjects of the British, and the columns devoted to Phileas Fogg's venture were eagerly devoured by all classes of readers. At first, some rash individuals, principally of the gentler sex, espoused his cause, which became still more popular when the Illustrated London News came out with his portrait, which had been copied from a photograph in the Reform Club. A few readers of the Daily Telegraph even dared to say, "Why not, after all? Stranger things have come to pass." At last, a long article appeared on the 7th of October in the Bulletin of the Royal Geographical Society, which treated the question from every point of view and demonstrated the utter folly of the enterprise. Everything, said the paper, was against the travelers. Every obstacle imposed alike by man and nature. a miraculous agreement of the times of departure and arrival, which was impossible, would be absolutely necessary for him to succeed. He might, perhaps, reckon on the arrival of trains at the designated hours in Europe, where the distances were relatively moderate, but when he calculated upon crossing India in 3 days and the United States in 7, could he rely beyond misgiving upon accomplishing this? There were accidents to machinery, the liability of trains to run off the line, collisions, bad weather, being blocked up by snow. Was this not all against Phileas Fogg? Would he not find himself, when traveling by steamer in the winter, at the mercy of the wind and fog? It is uncommon for the best ocean steamers to be 2 or 3 days behind time, was it not? But a single delay would suffice to fatally break the chain of communication should Phileas Fogg once miss even by an hour a steamer. Well, then he would have to wait for the next, and that would irrevocably render his attempt in vain. This article made a great deal of noise, and being copied to all the papers, seriously depressed the advocates of the rash tourist. Everybody knows that England is the world of betting men, who are of a higher class than merely gamblers. To bet is a part of the English temperament. Not only the members of the Reform, but the general public made heavy wagers for or against Phileas Fogg, who was set down in the betting books as if he was a racehorse. Bonds were issued and made their appearance on 'Change. Phileas Fogg bonds were offered at par or at premium, and a great business was done in them. But 5 days after the article in the Bulletin of the Geographical Society appeared, the demand for these began to subside. Phileas Fogg declined. They were offered by package, at first of 5, then 10, until finally nobody would take less than 20, 50, even 100. Lord Albemarle, an elderly paralytic gentleman, was now the only advocate of Phileas Fogg left at all. This noble lord, who was confined to his chair, would have given his entire fortune to be able to make the tour of the world, even if it took 10 years, and he bet £5,000 on Phileas Fogg. When the folly as well as the uselessness of this adventure was pointed out to him, he contented himself with saying, "If the thing is feasible, the first to do it ought to be an Englishman." The Fogg party dwindled more and more. Everybody was going against him, and the bets stood 150 and 200 to 1. And a week after his departure, an incident occurred which deprived him of any backers at all, at any price. The Commissioner of Police was sitting in his office at 9 o'clock one evening when the following telegraphic dispatch was put into his hands. Suez to London. Rowan, Commissioner of Police, Scotland Yard. I've found the bank robber. Phileas Fogg. Send without delay warrant of arrest to Bombay. Signed, Fix, a detective. The effect of this dispatch was instantaneous. The polished gentleman disappeared to give place to the bank robber. His photograph, which was hung with those of the rest of the members at the Reform Club, was minutely examined and betrayed feature by feature the description of the robber which had been provided to the police. The mysterious habits of Phileas Fogg were suddenly recalled. His solitary ways, his sudden departure, and it seemed clear that in undertaking a tour round the world on the pretext of a bet, he had no other end in view than to elude this detective and throw the police off of his trail. And that is the end of the chapter. and I'm going to go get a drink, blow my nose, and then you know what? That was really short, so we'll do one more. So give me just 1 minute. I like the plot twist. Phileas Fogg, notorious bank robber, who up until this point has been so precise in everything he does that when would he have had time to rob a bank? I guess we'll have to figure that out. As we jump back into Around the World in 80 Days, Chapter 6, in which Fix the detective betrays a very natural impatience. The circumstances under which this telegraphic dispatch about Phileas Fogg was sent were as follows. The steamer Mongolia, belonging to the Peninsula and Oriental Company, built of iron of 2,800 tons burden and 500 horsepower, was due at 11 o'clock a.m. on Wednesday, the 9th of October, at Suez. The Mongolia went regularly between Burinzi and Bombay via the Suez Canal and was one of the fastest steamers belonging to the company, always making more than 10 knots an hour between Burinzi and Suez, and 9.5 between Suez and Bombay. 2 men were promenading up and down the wharves among the crowd of natives and strangers who were staying at this once struggling village, which now, thanks to the enterprise of Monsieur Lepas, a fast-growing town. One was the British consul at Suez, who, despite the prophecies of the English government and the unfavorable predictions of Stevenson, was in the habit of seeing from his office window English ships daily passing to and fro along the great canal, by which the old roundabout route from England to India by the Cape of Good Hope was abridged by at least half. The other was a small, slightly built person with a nervous, intelligent face and bright eyes peering out from under eyebrows which he incessantly twitched. He was now manifesting unmistakable signs of impatience, nervously pacing up and down and unable to stand still for even a minute. This was Fix, one of the detectives who had been dispatched from England in search of the bank robber. It was his task to narrowly watch every passenger who arrived at Suez and to follow up all who seemed to be suspicious or who bore a resemblance to the description of the criminal which he had received 2 days ago from police headquarters in London. The detective was evidently inspired by the hope of obtaining the splendid reward which would be the prize of success, and was waiting with feverish impatience, easy to understand, the arrival of the great steamer Mongolia. "So you say, Counsel," he said for the 20th time, "this steamer's never behind time, eh?" "No, Mr. Fix," said the Counsel. "She was bespoken yesterday at Port Said, and the rest of the way is no account to such a craft. I repeat that the Mongolia has been in advance of the time required by the company's regulation, and gained the prize awarded for excess of speed." "Does she come directly from Burinzi?" "Directly. She takes on the Indian mail there, and she left there Saturday at 5 p.m. Have patience, Mr. Fix. She won't be late. But really, I don't see from the description you have how you will be able to recognize your man, even if he's on board the Mongolia." "Well, you see, a man rather feels the presence of these fellows, Consul, rather than recognizing them. You must have a scent for them, and the scent is like a sixth sense which combines hearing, seeing, and smelling. I've arrested more than one of these gentlemen in my time, and if my thief is on board, I'll answer for it. He won't slip through my fingers." "Well, I do hope so, Mr. Fix, for it was a heavy robbery." "A magnificent robbery, Counsel. £55,000. We don't often have such windfalls. Burglars are getting to be so contemptible nowadays. A fella gets hung for a handful of shillings." "Mr. Fix," said the counsel, "I like your way of talking, and I hope you'll succeed, but I fear you will find it far from easy. Don't you see the description which you have there has a singular resemblance to an honest man?" "Counsel," said the detective, "great robbers always resemble honest fellows. Fellows who have rascally faces have only one course to take, and that's to remain honest, otherwise they'd be arrested offhand. The artistic thing is to unmask honest faces. It's not easy, I admit it, but it's a real art." Mr. Fix evidently was not wanting in a tinge of self-conceit. Little by little, the scene on the quay became more and more animated. Sailors of various nations, merchants, shipbrokers, porters, fellows, all bustled to and fro as if the steamer were immediately expected. The weather was clear and slightly chilly. The minarets of the town loomed above the houses in the pale rays of the sun. A jetty pier, some 2,000 yards long, extended into the roadstead. A number of fishing smacks and coasting boats, some retaining the fantastic fashion of ancient galleys, were all discernible upon the Red Sea. As he passed amongst the crowd, Fix, according to his habit, scrutinized all the passers-by with a keen, rapid glance. It was now 10:30. "The steamer's not coming!" he exclaimed as the port clock struck. "She can't be far off now," said the counsel. "How long will she stop at Suez?" "4 hours. Long enough to get in her coal. It is 1,310 miles from Suez to Aden, at the other end of the Red Sea, and she has to take in fresh coal." "And does she go from Suez directly to Bombay?" "Yes, without stopping anywhere." "Good," said Fix. "If the robber is on board, he'll no doubt get off at Suez, so as to reach the Dutch or French colonies in Asia by some other route. He ought to know that he would not be safe even an hour in India, which is English soil after all." "Unless," said the counsel, "unless he is exceptionally shrewd. An English criminal, you know, is always better concealed in London than anywhere else." This observation gave the detective food for thought, and meanwhile the counsel went away to his office. Fix, left alone, was more impatient than ever, having a presentiment that the robber was on board the Mongolia. If he had indeed left London, intending to reach the New World, he would naturally take the route via India, which was less watched and more difficult to watch than the one on the Atlantic. But Fix's reflections were soon interrupted by a succession of sharp whistles which announced the arrival of the Mongolia. The porters and fellows rushed down the quay, and a dozen boats pushed off from the shore to go and meet the steamer. Soon the gigantic hull appeared passing between the banks, and 11 o'clock struck as she anchored in the road. She brought an unusual number of passengers, some of whom remained on the deck to scan the picturesque panorama of the town, while the larger part disembarked in the boats and landed on the quay. Fix took up his position and carefully examined each face and figure that made its appearance. Presently, one of the passengers, after vigorously pushing his way through the inopportune crowd of porters, came up to him and politely asked if he could point out the English consulate, at the same time showing a passport which he wished to have visaed. Fix instinctively took the passport, and with a rapid look read the description of the bearer. An involuntary motion of surprise almost escaped him, for the description in the passport was identical to that of the bank robber that he had gotten from Scotland Yard. "Is this your passport?" he said. "No," It is my master's. And your master? He has stayed on board. But he must go to the council in person to establish his identity. Oh, is that necessary? It's indispensable. And où est le consulate? There, on the corner of the square, said Fix, pointing to a house 200 steps away. I will go and fetch my master, who won't be very much pleased to be disturbed. Then this man bowed to Fix and went back onto the steamer. And that is the end of 2 chapters, which is about all I can do right now. It's funny how talking makes your nose stop. Anyway, I'm assuming that that was Passepartout, which is why I tried to do a French accent very poorly when my nose is stopped up. But you know what? I'm going to try it. Anyway, that was interesting. I don't know why I want Mr. Fix to be from Chicago, but that was also my very poor attempt at a Chicago accent. Hey, see? Yeah, I'm a detective. Anyway, thank you as always for listening. I hope that you enjoyed that, and I will see you tomorrow.